Hi, everyone. This is Chrissie Ferguson. I'm a staff writer at the Wishlist Foundation, and I'm here talking with Dana Wachs about her career in sound and how the pandemic has affected her career. In the end, we're also going to talk about what Wishlist and SoundGirls are doing together to help those who have been affected by the pandemic. So, welcome, Dana. I can't wait to talk to you about your career. And I'm going to start back at the beginning. When you were a little girl, I heard that you played different instruments and cello, right? and also bass guitar and acoustic guitar. And not only did she play instruments, but she started to get an ear for sound. Um, Thanks to her dad. So I just wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about how you started to listen more closely to music.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad worked in radio for most of my young childhood and young adult life. And I was brought up in the environment of DJ booths and promo LPs being sent in every week to get new music at all the top 40 hits back in the day. This was in the 80s. And yeah, so that kind of planted the seed for my career in music, though when I was younger, I didn't expect to have a career in music. I just loved music. I would buy blank tape cassettes and record the radio all the time and do my version of editing, which was pausing during commercials and then unpausing right when the song started again. Uh, I remember buying 12 cassettes and taping the entire Live Aid concert from my bedroom. I wish I still had those tapes. But yeah, that was basically the start outside of playing instruments, which I started cello at 9 and then switched to bass guitar and then was gifted an acoustic and just taught myself tabs and chords. So that was it.
Now, was the top 40 the Casey Kasem, like that type of?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, but here's the thing about the top 40. I mean, I'm sure everybody's childhood top 40 is the best in their mind. But we had the Cars and Stevie Wonder, and every band was either new wave or R&B. We also had New Jack Swing, which was like a whole new sonic signature for top 40. So it was, I feel like I got a pretty broad spectrum of music influence when I was a kid.
That's great.
And also MTV started, so that was, huge, of course.
Right. Yeah. What great exposure to all genres of music. That's awesome. So as you became a little bit older, you actually were playing bass guitar for a band. Mm-hmm. And can you tell us a little bit about that experience and when that happened?
Yeah, so I was living in Philadelphia, going to Temple University, and I had my bass. I was always playing, and I met a guy in a band and went up to New York to see his band play with another band who, in casual conversation, mentioned, "Hey, our bass player is leaving. If you know any bass players," and I went, I play bass, 18 or 19 at the time. And we actually ended up hitting it off, and I auditioned, went down to DC. The band was called Holy Rollers on Discord Records, which is a famous, DIY punk, but not strictly punk label, but punk and ethos, famously Fugazi, who Ian MacKaye is one of the singers. He runs Discord. They would never charge more than $5 for a ticket. Everything was all ages. It wasn't about going to a bar and drinking. It was about having a big community event and happening. And yeah, it was beautiful. So I got the job and I moved down to DC. And within 2 weeks, I was on my first US tour, and I was 19.
Wow. So. And how long were you, how long did you stay with that band playing bass guitar?
Well, They broke up about probably about a year after I joined. Um, so there wasn't a ton of experience with them besides the first US tour, and we recorded a track for a split 7 inch. And then I was just in DC. So,
Okay.
and then I
And
played with other people in the meantime.
wow, it's a teenager's dream.
I
That's
mean,
awesome.
I didn't even know it was my dream, and I just kind of let it, the road take me where it led. And it really was so much fun playing in these bands and being in DC, which the music scene there is so encouraging and it's so supportive. And it didn't rely on like major label influx or uh, all the styles that were being experimented with were, very much unique to uh, that environment. It was great. I mean, it was just beyond. I'm beyond lucky to have had that experience, especially at the cusp of my young adulthood. So
Right. Yeah. So what changed your path to, in live sound to going toward that sound engineer path? Was there a specific moment or time period where you
yeah.
said, this is where I want to go with this?
Well, so when I was on that first tour, we were opening for a band called 7 Year Bitch, which was like a pretty amazing Seattle like grunge all female band, and they had this incredible sound engineer named Lisa Faye, and she kind of got me thinking about sound as a possible path. It wasn't something I considered, but on that first tour I was learning a lot just about the tools on stage, what a monitor was, because I'd only played one show before this tour in front of an audience and had to deal with things such as monitors and DI boxes and whatnot. So she was very instrumental in holding my hand and, being really patient when I asked, what does that button do? And what does that do? And she also showed me that doing sound was not just a technical role, but it could be very creative. She was
Hmm.
showing me different effects she would use for different songs on the lead vocalist and whatnot. So that was kind of a little in. And then when I got back from that tour and then Holy Rollers broke up, I was working at a club called the Black Cat in DC. And I was taking tickets, I was working in the kitchen, I was doing everything, but I would watch the shows every night. And I would actually go there on nights I wouldn't work and watch the shows because they were amazing. And the whole place was run like a family. And I started watching the sound guy there, Nick, who ended up doing sound for Fugazi, and just watching him work. And I would just watch over his shoulder, and he was extremely patient with me. And I started asking again, like, what does that do? What does that do? And there was a moment I was in between bands. I wasn't playing any music at all. And I, started talking to him about like what his day entails and, what he gets from the job. And he was, extremely kind and explained everything to me. And that really piqued my interest. And I
It
thought, I'm going to
seems
get in
like,
there.
yeah, so many of you are, I keep hearing the same thing. There's such patience in this job. If anyone is interested in this job, I'm willing to show you, or that's how I became interested in this job. Somebody was willing to sit with me and show me. And so you must all have a tremendous amount of patience to do what you do.
I feel like, I wouldn't be where I am now without people like Lisa and Nick holding my hand and being patient with me and mentoring me through the process. Nowadays, there's a lot of schools out there that you can spend a lot of money on and get an education and even get help placement in jobs. But back then, that wasn't necessarily an option. The schools didn't exist except for maybe one or two, like
Hmm.
SAE or Full Sail existed maybe, but not in DC that I knew
Right.
of. Uh, Plus, who had the money
Right.
for schools? We, I feel like it's a pay it forward kind of situation where everybody learned from somebody else. And then
Right.
eventually, once you get to a certain point, you move into that mentorship role. And, there's, you can't be too precious about it because you have to remember where you came from. And I feel like that's where I am now, is where I can pass on knowledge to people
Right.
and let them take off. And eventually they'll be teaching somebody else, which, uh, in a community of sound people, I think that can be super valuable.
Absolutely. Now, prior to the pandemic, you were on the road pretty much 9 to 11 months a year.
Yeah.
And what is that like? I think that our community needs to understand what a day in the life of a sound engineer is like. I know you could probably go through the whole tour. That's probably a tremendous amount of work, but even just a day, like getting there at the site, like what's that like? I think people need to know how much work it is.
Well, it really depends on the level of touring. But in general, I would say across every level, from a van to a bus with like several semis behind you, you're talking about at least a 12-hour day every day. You're talking about a lot of time without privacy and without the food that you need to eat or want to eat. It's a lot of work. But let's just take a typical day. For example, um, let's say I'm on a bus, for example. You wake up and you have to try to get a shower in and, maybe get some breakfast before load in, which could start, loading could be at, say, 1 p.m., but the bus doesn't arrive until 11:30, and then it takes about 20 minutes to park up because these drivers have to park a 45-foot long bus with trailer. And then you have to hope that your day room is available at the hotel to get that shower in. And sometimes you have to pick between a shower and breakfast, and that's the reality of it. It's not glamorous at all. Load in, set up the stage. You do a line check, hopefully, before the band arrives. The band gets in, you do sound check as long as you're scheduled, sometimes longer. It really depends on what kind of technicalities you're dealing with as far as anomalies. If you're in a different venue every day, can include everything from something breaking in transit to maybe if you're using some house gear, maybe it's not compatible with what you're carrying with you. But that could be, it's like 1 p.m. to say 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Then a support band will check. So you get a little bit of time for dinner. And then you're basically just sitting until the show, till changeover. But that could just be an hour and a half of downtime. And then you're back to work and you do the show. And then you have to break down the show and then you have to load out. And then you get on the bus and you leave and you do the whole thing over and over again. It's
So
not
it's
like
a
there's a lot of,
tremendous amount of passion for this job,
you
clearly.
have to love what you do. I mean,
Right.
that's bottom line. If you don't love it, you're going to be miserable. I find that once I get on the road, I acclimate pretty well because the routine kind of gets into place. It usually takes a day or two to get into tour mode. And then, yeah. And then if you're in a van, I mean, it's the same thing, except, you know, you're driving all day before you start your job. So you can be driving 6 hours and then you start your 8 hour day, they're very long days and, but they can be super rewarding at the same time. And then occasionally you get a day off.
Right. So what would you think, or what would be some of your favorite memories in all of your career so far?
I have like 2+ decades of experience, but the things that come to mind are anytime I get to go to Japan is absolutely such a joy for so many reasons. I mean, Japan to start. I'm obsessed with Japanese food, so I eat really well. They take care of bands really well and crews. Their crew, basically, if you send them everything they need to know, when you walk in, everything is set up perfectly, like to the to the inch. Their stage
Wow.
crews are incredible there. And it's just a beautiful, the audiences are so respectful. And because you have to travel 18 to 24 hours on a plane to get there, you usually have a couple days a couple days off built into the schedule. So you actually do get to see the sights and have some time off. So
That's
that's always
nice.
nice. And then I can also think about one of my top 5 shows I've ever mixed was at Primavera Festival, which is in Barcelona every summer. It's one of my favorite festivals in the world, if not my absolute favorite, because they book such a esoteric range of artists. So you really do see music alongside other music, like top 40 versus some uh, troubadour from a beach town in Portugal
Right.
that put out a record after 40 years.
Right.
But I got to mix Deer Hunter on the main stage. We played after the Beach Boys and right before PJ Harvey, and just with one minor technical flaw at the very beginning. Um, After we fixed that, it was one of the most majestic concerts I think I've ever mixed, and I feel like the audience was with us. It was just such a beautiful moment for me. So,
Oh, what a great place to be. I'm sure it was amazing. And how has your job been affected by this pandemic? Are you still busy? Are you finding other ways to use your talent?
so I was on tour when this all went down. The last show I did, I was out with a band called Eve Tumor, who's on Warp Records, and we were doing underplays, which is playing to smaller venues just before the record came out, just to build some buzz and to get the band rehearsal dates in smaller markets. So the last show was on March 11th in Phoenix, which was my birthday.
Aw.
And then my birthday present was the next day getting to LA and our big LA show being canceled. That's the day that they said, no more than 250 people gathering.
Mm-hmm.
And our show was at Henry Fonda Theater, which was over 1,000 capacity. And the rest of the tour was canceled. Then my next tour was with the European group, and Europeans were suddenly banned from coming into America. So that tour was canceled. And then my next tour was with an English musician. And by then there was no touring. So I essentially lost 95% of my work for the year. And
Mm.
it's been so, at the beginning, we did not know how long this was going to last. And we had, we had hopes that maybe shows would come back in the fall, but obviously that's not the case. My last tour that was postponed to the fall, literally yesterday, I got the word that that was canceled. But of course, I knew it would be.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, I am fortunate in the sense that I did have, I was hired to score my first feature film, which is a dream of mine.
Great.
That production was all shot, and I worked to rough cuts, but then it was halted for a really long time, and it's just getting picked back up, which I've been looking for new work, but now I can't take it because I have to focus on the film.
Right.
That's how it happens, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I've made a new resume and I've started looking for work. And it's, to be honest, it's really hard to translate the skills that I have into a real world job, in the sense that, yes, I can use Excel and Microsoft Office, and I can run an event. Like if anybody needed an event run, I could do that, but there's no gatherings. So
Right.
how do you translate that? But even service jobs are hard to come by because everybody's looking for work and will take anything. And I'd be happy to work in a service job, but there's also the conundrum that you might be taking away a work opportunity from somebody who does not have the skills to work anything other than a service job, or say working in an Amazon warehouse or being a cashier. But those jobs
Right.
just don't exist. I live in Brooklyn, and we have over 800,000 people lost their jobs. So everything's super competitive. Even, being overqualified is a mark against me,
Right.
as if I wouldn't work so hard. But, I've looked for a lot of stuff, and the only thing that's come through, which I wanted to do anyway, is be a poll worker on election day.
Great.
So I got my first training class schedule starting in a couple weeks.
Well,
And
that's really exciting.
I really wanted to contribute in a way also because, I'm younger than a typical poll worker, and, to take part in this very, very, very important election was important to me, besides just phone banking and whatnot, doing what I can on the ground.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you're doing that. Thanks for doing that.
I'm so happy I can.
Well, we in the Pearl Jam community, we certainly are missing our live music, and we realize that there are so many people who make the shows happen, and there are so many people for all of the concerts that we love going to. That the behind the scenes people are the ones who make the shows happen, and we want to see everybody be able to come back to those jobs that they did so well. And so we're hoping that all of you who are watching out there, that you can help to support the Wishlist Foundation and SoundGirls as we help to, in phase 2 of our fundraiser, to fill some wish lists through Amazon and Target for those who are struggling to find work and those who are struggling to put food on the table and get back to school items for their kids. And so if you log on to wishlistfoundation.org and check out soundgirls.org, you can see how you can best help those wizards behind the curtain who really help to bring the shows to life for all of us. And Dana, we just wish you all the best, and hope that everything goes well with as a poll worker. That's going to be an amazing experience.
I'm excited.
That's great. And we certainly wish that you're back in doing what you love so much in the sound field. So thank you so much for your time, and hopefully we'll be talking to you soon.
It was my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for everything that you guys are doing. It means a lot because we don't have a lot of resources. So it really does mean a lot. And, I'm sure I can speak for everyone saying thank you to everybody out there that is donating and even just watching this video. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Dana. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. And we'll talk soon.
Yeah.
Okay. Good night.